here we are at the University of California in Santa Cruz, together with Professor Marilyn Walker. And I wanted to ask you about research ethics. So you and some collaborators have been some pioneers in detecting personality, in using text, natural language processing in order to detect personality. And there's that kind of, we are used that we are digitalizing many different tasks, and we are starting to digitalize our music preferences and our shopping, and to know, instead of going to a store, they now know our shopping. But we're starting to digitalize our psychologist and our psychiatrist, our personality, and knowing our personality, that these machines know our personality better than our spouses. Some studies. Okay, so you've been one of the pioneers. How did you start with that? How did you come up with this idea of getting into this field? And
I got interested in that because I was interested in linguistic style. So I was interested in it from the perspective of how you could get a machine to be expressive. And not just be kind of formulaic in the way it said things.
Oh, so you were interested first in how to give machines personality.
I was more interested in how to give machine personality and how to make it more expressive and be interesting. Because it's one of the things I've always been interested in, is how people express themselves and the subtle differences in how people would, different people would say the same thing, basically. Right. So I started being interested in how to make a machine express itself, but when I started working with a PhD student on that, Francois Maurès was his name, it was obvious to him how you could try to recognize personality rather than generate it, right? Okay, so it seemed like it's an easier task to recognize personality rather than generate it. So one summer when I was off doing something on sabbatical, he spent the whole summer doing work on personality recognition, and when I got back, he had these kind of initial results on personality recognition. And so I said to him, oh yeah, okay, you've done the easy thing, now turn to the harder thing, which is generating things with different personality. But I did get really interested in the idea of personality recognition and the fact that we could get, pretty high accuracy for some traits like introversion, extroversion. And the argument is, and there starts to be more research results showing this, is that, for example, for a coach, like if somebody's had a stroke and they need to do medically recommended exercises, if you give them an introverted coach and they're introverted, they do their exercises for longer. And if you give them an extroverted coach and they're extroverted, they do their exercises for longer. Or for children, there's a suggestion that a reading coach, if it's introverted, it would get a child to read better than extroverted, right? That an extroverted coach might make a timid child just back off from that technology, right? So we had good things in mind, right? And then in the last election, it turned out that, Cambridge Analytica was using similar techniques to these ones that we had pioneered to profile people on Facebook and to do targeted advertising that maybe, used the worst parts of people's personality, right?
Fear, for example.
Fear, or there's a lot of traits like being dogmatic is a kind of combination, being dogmatic or being a rule follower, or, there's certain particular personality traits that are can be very good in some particular manifestation, right? You think you want a lawyer to be a kind of inherent rule follower or to be interested in the rule of law or something like that. But then, that same trait could possibly be exploited, to kind of persuade somebody in a different way. And that was kind of too close. It's kind of too close to home that this technology that I had thought could be used to do good was actually, in my view, being used to kind of exploit people's weaknesses and maybe make them angry or upset or vote in a particular way because they were angry or upset.
Instead of understanding the personality, you bring out the best out of them or compliment them. You
might actually bring out the worst.
Brainwash them. Yes.
Right, and that's a kind of ethics, and I think it's very difficult to, when you're working on a technology, it's very, very difficult to predict what kind of effect it might have. It's hard to, kind of look in the future and imagine, something being used in a bad way, but that does,
right.
I mean, if you look at something like plastic, right, that was
Yes.
invented for the space program, you know, and now
Yeah.
we see plastic is kind of being used too much and it's kind of a bad thing, it needs to be more regulated. You know, that probably would have been very difficult to predict at the time that the plastic
Right,
was
it's every technology, right? Technology is always a tool. It's not technological determinism. The technology is, I often think about the hammer, right? So the hammer, if you want to build some kind of shelter, we always needed something like a hammer. You cannot use your hands, but everything similar to a hammer you can also, use to really hurt somebody or kill somebody.
Right.
Now is it the fault of the hammer? Well, no, it's interesting. So you've been in that, so you helped to develop a technology that then started to be misused or started to be used for a purpose that it was not intended. What are your thoughts on it? So you said then, it would need to be more regulated. So at the end, when we find the negative sides, at the end it's not to ban the technology and say, because it's not the technology's fault, it's more like how the technology is used. Or what can you do about it? Because you cannot have the benefits without having the downsides. Once you have the hammer, you still need it.
I mean, personally, I was as somebody who considers herself a kind of member of Silicon Valley and the high tech community, I was actually really disappointed when the trolling, the trolling was discovered on Facebook and that Twitter, that all those social media channels were used, for propaganda basically, right? So it's kind of standard propaganda techniques, that you would have seen like any time there was a kind of regime event, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, propaganda is very well understood, and
that's how my discipline, communication, came out of that, basically analyzing what the first.
Yeah, so I was really disappointed when Facebook and Twitter, when they sent their lawyers to Washington to talk to to Congress. I felt ashamed for my industry because I felt like why should they be just interested in like covering their butts, right, and trying to make sure that they're that they're not legally liable. Why wouldn't they have gone to Washington themselves and said, this is a real leak in our platforms that we let all this advertising and all this targeted, all these things be bought and paid for without kind of looking more closely at the content. Why didn't they like fess up and go right out there and say they fixed it? Instead, that Zuckerberg makes one announcement like, we recognize there's a problem and we're going to fix it. That was only after like all this other data had come out. They didn't surface the data themselves, and so I mean maybe it's
that was a very interesting hearing on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, and maybe it's a bit strong to say ashamed, but I actually did feel ashamed. I thought, come on, guys,
I think many people felt that.
Come on, guys, you're making billions of dollars. This is a mistake. There was a hole. There was a leak in the way that these platforms could be used, and why didn't you just fess up and say, like, we're really taking this seriously and we're going to fix it, you know? Yeah. So that to me is the most significant kind of thing recently. And I did see a lot of things, I don't know if it got pushed, but I did see a lot of things where, some people tried to link it to diversity at those companies, saying if they'd had more, if they had more blacks or Latinos working in tech in those companies, the people in the companies would have recognized more quickly that there was this kind of, biased view kind of coming in and like taking over people's feeds and stuff like that. That, if you'd had people that were directly affected by some of that propaganda, it would have been recognized earlier inside the companies. I don't know to what extent whether that's true or not, but it's possible that it would have been true. Right?
Yes, very good point. I think that's a very good takeaway. So you can build technology, but you also have to be responsible for it and see how you can safeguard it. And once you discover some things, as you said, it's really difficult to predict.
It's difficult
how people can. But once you have a suspicion, react quickly. That's what you would say.
Right,
react quickly and get behind it.
Yeah, and it might be that at Facebook or Twitter or whatever that they need to have more humans you know, on the ground, kind of looking at what's going on.
That's fantastic hearing that from you. we still need some humans. Okay, so on that note, thank you very much.
Okay,
Very
thanks.
interesting.
All right.